Hi, Catherine here with Circle Art Designs. Well, happy Friday. Today we are going to be working on our last project, project number 5 from the August Bargain Bead Box series. This will be the Autumn Mushroom Faux Leather Memory Wire Bracelet. I love doing these kind of bracelets. And wait till you see the finished result. So let's gather up our supplies and get started. So my work table says, give thanks to the Lord. And I do give him thanks for the colors of fall we've been working with and the delicacy of little mushrooms. So let's get started. We've put my placemat on there and I've got all my little pins in the right place, so maybe my hands will stay in place. And we're going to pull our first beads. We've used these in several projects. I cannot believe how many of them we were given. These are our coin olive shimmer beads from the August Bargain Bead Box. Next we have our opaque peach shimmer rondelle beads, 6 by 4 millimeter. Aren't these beautiful? I just love that peachy color. So the next one we're pulling is the 8 millimeter Unakite round beads. I just think these are so pretty, and look how many I still have. I'm going to enjoy using these around Christmas. I love all of the different greens and oranges and whites and creams on those beads. They're just lovely. And next up are the millimeter electroplated agate druzy beads. Aren't those a beautiful color? I love druzy beads and did not know about them until I started getting the Bargain Bead Box. I love the little crystal in the beads. It's just wonderful. I can hardly wait to use these. I have to tell you, I've been spacing them out a little bit and holding on to them thinking, will I use them? Will I not use them? Do I want to hold them for Christmas? Well, I'm going to use a few of them for this bracelet. As we're putting these away, would you take a moment and like this video and leave a comment? Thank you so much. It really helps, and I love to read the comments. And next up, again from the Bargain Bead Box, is the Ivory Champagne 4 millimeter crystal bicone beads. I love these. They're so pretty. So those are the beads I will be using from the August Bargain Bead Box. Now you may have seen these before. This is from a previous Bargain Bead Box and I had a few left over. These are crystal glass faceted beads in garnet. And I'm also going to use from my stash, boy did that pass fast, a 3 millimeter round ball spacer. And I'm going to use the gold memory wire. Now I'm going to be making this bracelet as a 3-strand memory wire bracelet. And we'll cut that in just a minute. And then from, again, the August Bead Box, I pulled this wonderful, delicate little mushroom, hence the name for the bracelet. Isn't that beautiful? And it already comes with its own jump ring. Now, I did pull these leaves. I decided not to use them. I thought it was too much, and I had put them away to use at Christmas. And then the jewelry tube bead in the dark brown, we're going to be cutting little pieces of this to give it a beaded faux leather look. So we will need our flush cutters. Remember, the flat side on the back is the one that will cut it flush. That inside that I'm showing you, it will sometimes give you a point. So I always make sure I butt up the back wherever I want a straight, flat cut. So let's get started. To do this, you have to decide how much of the the tubing you want between each of your components. I'm running a little more than a ½ inch. To tell you the truth, this first set I did not measure it, but I'm putting that flat side up against the edge, making sure that it's flat, because when you put your beads up against this, if it has a slanted end to it, they will not lay right. And then we're just going to cut a whole bunch of these, because remember, we're going around 3 of the wire bracelets. Now, when I first started this, and you'll see it, I thought I would use a longer one for the middle wire, and I cut some of those, but I ended up saving them for another project because I really like the look of the smaller ones. And what I'm showing you here is I flubbed up. I cut that thing too long, so I'm going to have to go back through using the flat side and cut it again so that they match. So I went ahead off camera and I cut a lot of these little ones. And let me dump that package out so you can see them. Look at all those. Now, will I have to have more? Maybe, but I'll know before I use the last one. So this is what we're going to do, and I'm moving it off camera because I have such a little bitty space to work with. Now, this is the other one that I thought I might use, and so I measured it. It's about 1.5 inches to almost 2 inches, and it was just too wide, even with the bigger pieces, at least for my taste. But I wanted to leave this in because I wanted you to see that there were other possibilities than just the little spaces that I made. It's always important to get your ends right together. That's why I'm always touching the ends and holding it real tight, because this jewelry tubing can be very flighty. And it'll jump out if you're not real careful, and you'll get mismatched ends. So I cut some of those as well, and that is what I'm going to use in the middle, or at least that was the game plan. And I'll show you what I mean when I get there. Okay, now onward and upward. So to cut the memory wire, you are going to need some memory wire cutters. Let's see if I'm going to put, I've laid out all my beads. I hope I show them to you. Yes, I did. Yay. Okay, so that's my pile of beads. I'm not sure how many I'm going to need. So some of them, like the reds, I put out all I had. But then others of them, I just put a little pile out so that I would have to pick from them. It's kind of like when an artist puts their paint on their little tile so that you have all your paint together so that you can build the beauty of the picture. And that's what we're doing here. We're building the beauty of the picture because we are a jewelry artist, and we're building with the color and the shapes and the textures of the beads. So let's go on to the memory wire. Now, it's very important when you're counting this that you find your first, where your end is, and then you go past that end on your last loop, because you have those great big beads that are going to go on it, and it will take extra room on your wrist. These are what you call memory wire cutters. You cannot use regular cutters on these because this memory wire will just chew them up and ruin your beautiful blades. So I would highly recommend you invest in some memory wire cutters. You can find them on Amazon. I bought these at Hobby Lobby, but I have seen them on Amazon. So after I've cut it, made sure that I had 3 rings, that one ring went well past the other ring, I'm going to take my straight edge, my straight nose pliers, and I'm going to turn a loop. Now when you turn this loop, you want to make sure the edge of your memory wire is flush up against your straight nose pliers so that you don't have any hangover. You turn it around towards the top of your memory wire and make sure that the end touches the loop and closes completely. Now we're going to get the other side and we're ready to start beading. I'm going to start with a 3mm spacer ball, then one of the faux leather jewelry tubes, and a 3mm spacer ball. And I do that because, first of all, I really like the way it finishes off the look of the jewelry tubing, but I also want that spacer ball to be a safeguard at the end for that loop. Now then, we've put on the peach shimmer. Then we have put on one of the Unakite beads and another peach shimmer. And then, oh, I'm about to let that fall off, aren't I? Now get back up there. What are you doing? Oh, it did fall off. Yeah, sometimes I get so busy trying to pick up the beads on the other side of the little camera that I forget to look. Oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm trying to set the light. I had forgot to turn on the other light and it was kind of dark. So there goes back on the peach shimmer. This peach shimmer, remember, is a faceted round bead, and it is really pretty. Isn't that lovely? So that is your first component. It will have peach shimmer, your Unakite, and a peach shimmer. Then I put on a 3mm spacer again. I put on the jewelry tubing and a 3mm spacer ball. And now I'm moving this all the way down through all 3 loops because I want to see how it sits on, this will be the back of your bracelet. And I'm really liking that. But do you see what there you go. So I've already put on the spacer ball. So we're going to go again with the peach shimmer, the beautiful Unakite. I'm so glad I'm going to have some of these for Christmas. And the peach shimmer. And then a spacer ball. And the jewelry tubing. And I'm just going to continue that until I make it all the way around the first loop, because that is where I want to start my next component. So I think I'll speed this up just a bit. You know, I love working with memory wire. I love memory wire bracelets. I was first introduced to them by a woman named Wendy Whitman, and she passed away here recently. And I am so glad for all the things that she had brought into my life, all the different designs and the way of looking at art and jewelry design. And it just made such a difference in my life. And so thank you, Wendy, for everything you have done for me in my life. All right, do you see how fast those beads are just moving on there? I tell you what, I love fast forwarding because who wants to watch paint dry? But I keep moving this down and I'm checking it. And the reason I am is, number one, I want to make sure that my cuts are really flush cuts and my beads are laying flat against them. And I'm looking for the end of the circle. And what I'm looking for the end of that circle is where my first bead component is. Because remember, when we get all these on here and we start the next one, we will be using those 10mm beads. And I want to make sure this lines up. So I'm looking here and let's see how they're, do you see where my oh, come on, Catherine, be still. Where the first component is in connection with my component at the end, and that last component matches up with the circle that I began with. I hope that made sense. You just want to make sure you go a little further than you did when you started, because you're going to have a little more room on that last loop. That should make more sense. Okay, here we go. Let's slow down a bit. Now these are the druzy beads. I have done my loop all the way around, and now I'm trying to decide how I'm going to use these druzy beads on here. Remember, my first thought was I would go with the jewelry tubing that would be about twice that size. So that's what I'm playing with. I want to add some of this garnets. It's a really pretty fall red in these beautiful garnets, and I'm just trying to decide, well, how do I want these to sit? Where do I want them to sit? And here we go with the big ones. Now that looks real pretty right there, doesn't it? Well, let's see how it looks in a minute. So the game plan here, at least for right now, is to use those beautiful olive shimmer coin beads and some of the Ivory Champagne, and that's what I'm putting on right here. Remember to make sure the points on those bicones point the same direction. And there is the olive shimmer coin bead, and I'm going to move it all the way down. I don't want to use a lot of the druzy beads because really I'm saving some for Christmas. And so I'm going to use the olive coin beads here because it's just a beautiful fall green color. Now doesn't that look pretty? And it is finishing up right next to the short jewelry tube. So now I'm pulling out, trying to decide what am I going to do here. Hang on just a second. Okay, now that I've moved that down and see how it's going to look, I'm going to put on a spacer ball, the 3mm. Come on, let's hit the hole. Yay! And then I'm going to put on another one of the jewelry tubes. Remember, I'm still using the short ones on this one. I have decided to put those long ones just in the center. And then I'm going to use another of the 3mm. And then I'm going to put on one of the Ivory Champagne bicones, a olive shimmer coin bead, Ivory Champagne bicone, and a spacer ball. And then continuing, because I'm trying to the middle, I'm putting on the short jewelry tube, and I'm going to move this down and see exactly where I'm setting on that middle bracelet. So using the loop at the bottom on the first one, I'm going to go across the diameter and check out where the middle of that the middle of the second bracelet is. Now don't get me doing math, because I have to tell you that is not one of my strengths. But I can eyeball it and look and say, well, have I overshot the mark? What have I decided I'm going to do with this? Carrying on. We're going to do a 3mm spacer ball. Now we're doing one of the red crystal faceted glass garnets. They're not real garnets, but boy, they're the closest thing I have ever seen. They're beautiful. A druzy, a red one, and another of the 3mm spacer balls. And then I'm going to move it up here and see exactly where I am setting with this bracelet. See, I had originally said, oh, I'll do 3 of these, but I'm not sure. So at this point, I have decided that the long ones are not going to work because I just do not, I don't, first of all, have enough room. And second of all, when I looked at it, it made the middle bracelet look too sparse. Now, a lot of people, like my daughter, like things that are really sparse. They like the simplicity of it, the cleanness of the lines. But I am one of those more is better girls. So now I'm checking to see how I like this. Is this going to work? And I'll tell you, my original design said we're going to do 3 of these. But when I got on there and looked, I went, I'm not sure about that. So I am going ahead and I'm putting on that 3mm spacer ball to finish out that section. And I'm going to go ahead and do another one of the short jewelry tubes. I told you would need a lot for this 3-round memory wire bracelet. And I'm going to close it up, as always, with a spacer. And now I'm going to go ahead and put on the Ivory Champagne bicone, and then the olive shimmer, and then the bicone again. Don't drop it, Catherine. And then the little spacer ball. What I decided was putting all 3 of that druzy beads on at one time in one place was just too overpowering for the bracelet. So what I have decided to do is put the 3rd druzy on the 3rd round, and I'm going to space it, I hope, between the 2 druzies that I've already put on there. Now, the really nice thing that I have learned over the years is making jewelry, unless you're soldering, is very forgiving. And so if I don't like the way this is turning out, or if you're making one and you don't like the way it's turning out, then all you have to do is take it apart, recount what you've done, and start over. Now, do you see the way that piece is cut at an angle? I cut that at an angle by not making sure the back was flush up against that, and it cut it at an angle. So I took it off, and we're going to try a different one. Here goes on a bicone and the olive shimmer coin bead, and another of the Ivory Champagne bicones, a spacer, and now we can put on our next, I'm sorry, I got to looking, next jewelry tube and a spacer ball. Sometimes I'm watching what's happening and I'm thinking, what are we going to do next? What are we going to do next? So do you see how those are coming at an angle? And that's really what you want, because you can just see it in this picture that I want that druzy to set right between those other 2 druzy beads. And that's what I'm aiming for. All right, so let's move on. I'm moving all of these beautiful beads, and because now I have finished the round with the coin beads, and I'm going to go back to our first component, which was the peach, the Unakite, the peach, a spacer ball, and the jewelry tubing, another spacer ball, and a peach, and the Unakite, and the peach, and the spacer ball. So when you're making one of these memory wire bracelets, you really have to be aware all the time of where you're setting on the particular round you're on. Now here I'm looking to see, is this going to work out? Is this going to hit exactly where I want it to go? And I want on that third round where I am putting just the single druzy to go ahead and put my charm on, that lovely, delicate little mushroom charm. So I'm putting it on to make sure that's going to sit exactly the way I want it to, because remember, when you get it on your wrist, the beads are going to lay slightly different, so that when I put that druzy on, it's going to set on my wrist exactly where I want it to be. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and put on that 3mm, and I'm switching back to the component with the druzy. So I'm going to use this garnet glass bead. Then I'm going to put on my mushroom, and the reason I'm putting on that mushroom right there is because it already has a jump ring on it, and I want it to fit nice and snug, but not tight, into the design. And so then I put on the druzy and another of the garnet beads and a 3mm spacer ball, and I'm going to move that down and go ahead and put on one of the short jewelry tubing. And do you see how it just sets just slightly between those other two? But when I put it on my wrist, it really sets in between the other two, because my wrist and the larger balls or beads are taking up more of the room on my wrist. So now I'm going back to the peach, Unakite peach. Then I'll put on a spacer, and we are coming to the very end. Now people have said, Catherine, people that I know, not y'all are great, have said, don't you put too much lap over on your bracelets? Well, that's really a personal choice. I don't like bracelets that sit right next to each other. Bracelet 1 and bracelet 3 line up in a line, because as you're moving around, at least for me, they gap and it bothers me. So if I move it just a little further over, if I make the lap just a little longer between bracelet 1 and 2 or bracelet 1 and 3 or 1 and 4, it doesn't matter. If I make the lap longer, then it doesn't gap on my wrist. Now here is my problem. Do you see how little bit of that I have? This is a trick that I learned a long time ago. You take a pair of pliers, you pinch the end, I push it back in so I can show you. You hold that jewelry tubing down and it pulls it out enough for you to go ahead and make your loop. Make sure when you make your loop, I'm making sure that it's not too tight, that everything is still moving. And then I decide, oh, I forgot, I need a 3mm right there. So I had to pull that sucker back out because I let go of it. And I don't use all of this, but I'm taking it and turning it with my straight nose, making sure that the end doesn't go past the straight nose pliers, making sure that it's closed, that it's straight, and then my bracelet is finished. I just love this. Isn't that pretty? Let me see. I'll put it on. Thank you so much for joining me for this beading adventure today. It has been so much fun. I'm sorry to see this one come to an end. I'll put pictures up on the other side. I hope you enjoyed this bracelet. Look it up. Get you some beading tubing of your own. There are so many things you can do with that tubing. I've seen them used for necklaces. I've seen them used for chokers. They're just amazing. I have really enjoyed sharing this time with you. I hope you have a great day and a wonderful weekend. And may you have an amazing beading adventure of your own. Catherine, circleartdesigns.square.site. Bye, y'all. God bless. I'll see you next week.